shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
So, we begin with this image from the scriptures of this shepherd. This shepherd who doesn't abandon the sheep, this shepherd who stays with them no matter what, protecting them no matter what, even when it costs the shepherd his life. And part of that is the vision of God's kingdom and what God's kingdom does look like and what God's kingdom will look like. And sometimes the easiest ways for us to understand God's kingdom is when we compare it to what is not God's kingdom, the broken world in which we still live, and the broken ways of seeing things that are still the lens through which we look. So in order to help paint that picture today, I read a book this last week. I got some books for continuing education, and they're sitting on my desk, and they keep beckoning me, so I'm going to have to get some more books now for continuing education. But the book I read, I thought Keith had recommended it to me, and when I asked him about it, he said he hadn't. So somebody recommended the book, The Emperor's Eyes. It is a book that is set in Hawaii, right before the beginning of World War II, at least our involvement in World War II. And it's a book that is told, it is a fictional piece of work, but it is based upon real characters and real actual events surrounding World War II and what happened. The book is told through the eyes of Eddie. Eddie is a young man who was born in the Hawaiian Islands, and he identifies himself as an American. That's how he sees himself. Now, his dad sees things a little bit different because Dad was born in Japan. So Dad sees things from an old world point of view, but Eddie and his friends see things very differently. And Eddie has falsified his birth certificate and went off and joined the army. So he has been through basic training. He and his buddies are at home on leave in the Japanese camp on that fateful morning when Pearl Harbor was bombed. So as soon as the bombing unfolds, they try to rush back to base. And when they get back to base, all of a sudden, they are no longer U.S. soldiers like they were when they left. And because they are Japanese, they are put in their own corner of the camp. And as the days go on, their weapons are taken from them, and barbed wire is strung around them. And one morning they wake up, and the rest of the crew have all their weapons aimed at them. It was a really hard, brutal moment in time for the entire nation, but certainly for these people, that when people looked at them and looked at their eyes, what they saw were the emperor's eyes, and what they saw was the enemy. So this group of Japanese islanders were eventually shipped over to mainland, and they were hauled across the country, first Wisconsin and then down to Mississippi. And in Mississippi, they were put on an island. It was called Cat Island, and they were part of an experiment. And the experiment, this is all real history here, the experiment was to train attack dogs to kill Japanese people. Because the prevailing thought was all Japanese people smelled the same, so if they could teach the dogs to attack and kill these Japanese folks, the dogs could be used in the front line. And so for months, these 25 young men were bait. Eventually, As the experiment comes to a close, they bring the officials in to show what a beautiful experiment this has been. And of course, the dogs fail the experiment because all Japanese people do not smell the same. Each human smells differently. So the experiment was over, and at last the men were brought back into the military with respect and honor due them, and they were sent to serve on the front. We don't have to think very long about different points in history, including right now, when we create scenarios of us and them. We can think about political parties, we can think about races, we can think about ethnicities, we can think about religion, and the list goes on and on and on, that we divide people into us and to them. And there's nothing that is much harder than to heal the divisiveness, the hatred that is created when there is us and there is them. When our country was very young, a missionary had been sent to native peoples. And as the missionary was trying to articulate Christianity to the tribal leader, one of the ways he referred to God was as our Father. And the tribal leader stopped him. And the tribal leader said, "Our Father." And the missionary said, "Yes, our Father." And the tribal leader says, "That is so intriguing. That's never how we think of the Spirit. We think of the Great Spirit and the lightning, or the thunder, or the blizzard. But the Great Spirit as our Father, that is so beautiful." And the native leader thought more about it, and he said, "You said our Father, didn't you?" And the missionary said, "Yes." And the native said, "So that means he's your father?" "Yes." "And that means he's my father?" And the missionary said, "Yes." And the native tribal leader said, "Then that makes us brothers." Yes. On this Sunday, when we talk about the Good Shepherd, as we get a vision as to what God's kingdom looks like, we are reminded that because there is one shepherd, there is one flock. Amen.
Well,